The Drazzy Show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Drazzy Show. I'm your boy Drazzy, and today I got a very special guest.
Ngozi Cadmus.
Hello, Ngozi.
Hello.
Ngozi, what is it that you do?
So I'm a mental health and leadership expert. I'm a qualified psychotherapist, social worker and business strategist. I'm the CEO of Frontline Therapist, an affordable, culturally sensitive counselling service online, and also Frontline Coaching, which is a data analytics, diversity and inclusion consultancy working to help retain and ensure that Black people are seen at every level in companies and organizations.
I want to ask you a question. Why do you think it's such a taboo in the Black community when it comes to people who suffer from mental health illness?
I don't know, I'm a bit of a history buff. It was a taboo everywhere, first and foremost. So it's important to make mention that mental illness has been a taboo everywhere. It seems like it's less of a taboo in, I guess, the British white culture.
Yeah.
And there might be true in aspects of it, but it was 60 years ago, it was the same thing,
All right.
But it's because we have other dynamics within African, Caribbean and Asian cultures. We are very heavily spiritual.
Yes, very spiritual.
And that means spiritual in terms of obviously
very superstitious.
Very superstitious. And also our understanding of things, I guess, also has been stripped. And I think the global migration has also complicated matters. So we've got a lot of us from the diaspora in this country interacting with the British, with their way of being, and then trying to kind of somehow, amalgamate the both, right?
So, so do you think that whole, what's what I'm looking for? That whole kind of like process of trying to, fit in and be included, or to try and navigate through a foreign place that we're migrating to, that could also be part of the reasons why mental health could be more prevalent in the Black community?
Not necessarily prevalent, but that's a big reason why people experience mental health issues. So migration, going from one country to another, one norms to another, one value system to another, and we're talking about going to a hostile environment.
Yes, very true. Yeah.
It has done something to our parents, especially those that came in the Caribbean, that came in the 30s and 40s and 50s, 60s, and a lot of Africans came in big mass. We know that people have been here, and we know that people were here before that, but we know in mass they came at certain points, and particularly Ghanaians and Nigerians came a lot in the 80s and 90s, right? Though there was some in the 60s as well. They came to a hostile environment.
I know. I've heard a few stories, definitely.
They came in a hostile environment. So imagine stripping yourself from your land, what you know. Let me get, before I even say that, have you moved?
Have I moved? Yeah.
That's quite traumatic, right?
Oh, yes, definitely stressful.
Very stressful.
Very stressful, yeah.
And imagine doing that, and you have to go back to work maybe in 2 days' time. You weren't able to take
you got to hit the ground running straight away,
and your things are not around. You feel disorientated. You're not fully comfortable. Imagine your bed is not there. You're laying on the floor. And we know the internet access doesn't come on for a few days, so you're doing it on your phone. Maybe your bathroom, you got to run. You got to boil the hot water because. I'm saying that is just going from one city to another city, or one area in London to another area in London, let alone one continent to another continent, and then the environment is hostile to you. And you're starting from the bottom, right? And you're trying to understand, and then some people it's a totally different language that they're trying to understand. So I think that would mess with anybody's mental well-being, right? That would really impact the way you perceive yourself. Because I think, for your audience, what is mental health, right? Mental health is the way this is my simple definition. The way you see yourself, the way you feel others see you, and the way you perceive the world. Because when you go into every mental health disorder now, when something is not right in your mental well-being, it's how you perceive yourself, how you feel others perceive you, how you are perceive the world. It all falls into those domains. And of course it's about, you'll say optimum well-being, feeling good in yourself, coping with life, all of that. That's a longer description. But I think very, very simply, if you want to understand mental health, is how you see yourself, how you feel within your mind of yourself. You know, physical health would be defined as how you feel physically, and then literally how do you physically feel fit, right? It's very simple. When you think about that, those three domains, because people that have struggled with mental health issues, they perceive themselves differently to others. So they might feel like they're not real. They're disconnected with themselves, disconnected with reality. They feel like everyone's against them, like paranoia, right? They feel like the world is burning, or they feel like there's somebody's spying on them, or the government. So it's all to do with those three domains, right? Someone's really depressed, feels like they're rubbish, they're terrible. Everyone wishes them. They feel like that nobody wants them around anymore, right? So it's all linked with how you see yourself, how you feel others see you, and how the world sees you.
I see.
That's how I think I make it very simple. But of course, go on Google and find a good.
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to get to that, and you saying that, it makes me understand it a lot more. Because when I was a little kid, I remember I had an auntie, and my mum told me when I was older, she went through like a divorce, and it traumatized her so much that she went a bit. I can't say crazy. Can I say crazy?
She just went out of reality a bit.
She went out of reality a bit. Do you know what I mean? And I remember my mum used to like call her and be like a rock for her and some kind of support for her. But when my mum passed away, she tried to call me, and I didn't know what to do, because I didn't have an understanding of it. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I feel guilty for that, because I feel like, okay, what's she doing now? Like, who's supporting her? Do you know what I mean? Because even though she has her pocket of family, she used to kind of like trickle a bit into mine. So I feel like I've kind of, severed that connection to her. Do you know what I mean? And that's because I had no clue. Some of the stuff you said now, I had no clue about it. Like her perception of reality. I genuinely come from that superstitious kind of like, African mentality where I just think, oh God, let me just stay away from that. And I don't know why.
Because what mental illness does to people, let's talk about in the Black community and even the Asian community, it's uncomfortable. It's the same way when it comes to people, someone... Like anything, there's lots of things taboo in the Black community. Same as Asian, sexual abuse, mental illness, sickle cell. Anything that is what we say not normal. But becomes a bit, because what it makes us do is a mirror to the society, right? And say, how well is society? And essentially what we're trying to say is Black people in our different pockets from different countries is we don't want to address the real issues in our society, because we've got to address the issues within ourselves. So the reason why things are a taboo is because people don't want to talk about it. People want to keep the status quo, want to maintain it, right? So the thing about mental illness is that, and also the real honesty is because what also makes it hard for a lot of Black people to accept is because it's not that it's coming from white people, but they've pushed it like in a positive way, like the awareness. And naturally, a lot of people are skeptical about that.
I see.
Because it's been on the backs of a lot of Black people.
Yes, of course. I've heard about some of the experiments done from America to over here.
People are going to be like, why should we trust what what they saying? Why should we trust? Your mum will say, when you are pregnant, make sure you take this thing. This thing is going to help, right? Then you say, when the doctor says, we have been producing children before. The typical thing, right? Because in their mind, this worked for them, this will work for you. And you're thinking like, no, I want to take medication from Holland and Barrett's, I don't know what that concoction is, mum. I ain't taking that.
But most of the time, that concoction is exactly what they've literally been influenced to create what we perceive as.
They might have superstition around it. The reason why I'm bringing that up is just to say that it's similar things, is that we have to understand with a lot of African and Asian culture is that they are feeling like, what's the word when you feel like something is making you believe something, like it's trying to
influence you, brainwash you.
Another word for brainwash is just the
persuade you.
No, but it's basically the understanding is they're trying to
manipulate you.
No, it's not. It doesn't have a connotation, so I'm not trying to use it. Yeah.
Okay. Is it like a figure, like a term?
It's just a term that talks about the fact that replacing one interpretation with another.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So we might come with a different interpretation, and then we're replacing one, and we're trying to say that this one is a better interpretation. So, but what I would say to kind of get to the point of the conversation, because I'm bringing different things because I want to widen the conversation. I think sometimes it's too simplistic when we say there's black people, there's a taboo in black culture, because if you look at history, there was a taboo in well, what is white culture, but in the UK 60, 80 years ago, and even in certain parts of the UK, mental illness is still not seen and accepted. It's just that there were so many inequalities within the black community when it comes to a lot of the systems that the services that we use, so law enforcement, mental health systems, we focus on the taboos in our culture a lot more, when there's also taboos. I've worked with a lot of white people that don't believe they've got mental health issues. No, they're like, what? I don't believe in that. They don't believe in that. They may not swap it with spiritual stuff.
Are they shunned by their family as much as Africans do tend to like kind of like shun people who have mental health problems?
That would be, I couldn't say that. We need to see that in research, but I would definitely say that I've met white people. Though I've put a lot more, independent of the area, and more black people in hospitals in areas, in certain areas that I live. It's the same, in all honesty. The families don't like it, don't get it, and will abandon you just as fast.
Damn. You know, there was a time when I used to travel around the UK. I used to do music and I used to sell my CDs, and I used to go around the UK and just go to town centres with my mates and just sell my CDs. And nearly every single city I went to, there was always a mad black person, male or female, on the high road. I used to be confused. And I remember saying to one of my mates, do you think these people something's being done to them? It don't make no sense how every single, I'm talking like Gloucester, Swindon, Ipswich, Manchester, Birmingham, there was always some mad black person in the town centre. And I used to think, do we suffer more from mental health illness than any other like race in the world or in this country in general?
Yes and no. So when I say no, I don't think so. I don't think so, but there's different research to indicate that we do. There's research that's been done in the African soil and in the Caribbean soil to say that the rates of mental illness is actually less. So that says something, right? Less. Yeah. But when we're in the Western world, when we're in countries that are not of our origin. Yeah. So no, but yes, in this country. So in all of the Western countries, Canada, Australia, Western Europe, America, we have a higher preponderance in contrast to where we are. So it's 1.2 million, or was it altogether 2 million black and mixed heritage people in the UK, and then the rates of black people with mental health disorders is higher than the proportion it should be, given the amount of people. But no, there's obviously more white people that are mentally ill, but of course they should be, because it's a white country. But it's just the rates. However, going back to our further conversation, it's hidden a lot. So you will find that in a lot of richer areas in the UK, they hide. That's why I'm saying that the taboo is also still there, but they just hide it. And because they've got money, maybe what they do is their brother or sister who's mentally unwell never goes to the hospital because they've got for 24-hour carers. But they're at home, not being seen. It's funny,
you do have that stereotype in the movies where there's always that mad white kid and his dad like some banker or lawyer or judge, and he knows his son's fucked up in the head, but he finds some way to hide it. Do you know what I mean? Just locks him in his room with all these toy soldiers and he's painting them. You see it in all these weird movies and that they find ways to like keep them, you know, isolated from the world. Do you know what I mean? So I guess that's true. When you don't have that kind of financial kind of like, you know, support, they've got to go out into the world and they represent your family. So it's a lot more prevalent. It's a lot more obvious that something's going on. Yeah.
But I think the issue with also black people and some Asians as well is to do with also class. So depending on your class will also depend on the level of support around. Because I assessed a Asian person who was very wealthy.
Oh, okay.
And he's going to be unwell all his life, but he lives in a 5-story house. He travels, he's half in the country here, half there. So he's mentally unwell, but
he can still run a business?
No, his family's wealthy.
Oh, his family's wealthy. Oh, I see. Okay.
So he travels with them.
Wow.
So doesn't mean that he doesn't still encounter services, but it might be less because they will. If he gets unwell, he might get unwell in another country. They deal with it there. But he's rich, so his lifestyle, what he gets, you know, he's basically able to express himself creatively and be okay. And because he doesn't need the benefits, so he paints, he does poetry. He's got a maid.
So he's got an outlet to like.
He's got an outlet for his things. He actually even, you know, so that's going to be very different for a lot of black people who don't have that.
Sorry to cut you. Does that help cure mental health illness, to have an outlet.
No, I wouldn't say it cures. It's part of the recovery. So let me give an example, right? So, the people in the screen can't see it. So I'm going to show it. And those that are listening, so I'm holding my bottle on my phone.
Yeah.
So this is a person, let's just say 2 black people, similar illnesses, both going to hospital. The bottle is more upper class. Yeah, the parents are quite wealthy, and the phone is lower class, right? Okay. They get treated similarly in hospital, but when they go out, the trajectory of their life is different. This person has family who can pay for 24-hour care and support. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And this person doesn't have to think about making money. It's okay. So it takes as long as needed to just, to get better and recover. They take their medication. The parents can afford psychotherapy, etc. This person is probably more reliant on the state. Needs benefits. Needs to go to a job center, needs to sign on, is living in a typical maybe housing estate, not the best conditions. It can't afford psychotherapy, so has to just take what's given in the NHS, in the system. Family is supportive but busy. Everyone is struggling.
Work.
Everyone's got to work.
Rat race.
So whose potential recovery going to be better and different?
The bottle.
Yeah. And it's not because money makes things better. It's because money provides access
convenience
to certain
as well.
things.
Yeah.
Convenience. He has less stress. This person's going right back into the stress. Going back into the conditions.
Yeah. And what? It's so deep you say that because the people who are meant to be their support unit, like you said, because they're busy hustling and busting, rat racing, sometimes they might have a way of perceiving that person or dealing with that person out of frustration that might push them deeper into that situation that they're in. Because you might think, I'm tired, I'm busy, and they're like, saying some stuff like...
This person is the firstborn son from a typical African household. The mother is in her 60s. She's thinking she wants to retire in 5 years, but she can't retire because the son, who she's hoping to look after her, is may not be ever able to ever look after her. Yeah. And then the sister now feels like, I'm now taking the burden for the family.
Yeah, and she might meet someone and might be too ashamed to say, my brother suffers from this, and she, damn, it just has like a ripple effect.
Or the sister has 2 kids and she just ain't got time. She got to focus on her 2 kids. Because she's got a baby daddy's not involved. Do you see the different things? Then the mother's left to look after, and then she's getting sick. She's got diabetes. She's getting high blood pressure because she's constantly stressed over her son. Her son is depressed, so he then goes in to take drugs. Do you see the cycle? There's so many factors contributed to the fact that this person's recovery, the phone's recovery, is different from the bottle. Maybe this person, what you find is a lot of these kids, he was bright, doing really well at university, had a difficult experience, played around with maybe weed, then had a drug-induced psychosis, then went into hospital, came back, and then was very more sensitive to stress. He went into his 3rd year, but couldn't take the stress, then he dropped out, and then spiraled out of control. His mother's like, what are you doing at home? Get a job. He tried to get a job, he can't hold down a job, then he really breaks down, then goes into hospital, comes back out, his mom says, get him out, he needs his own flat, I can't deal with him at home. He gets his own flat in a drug-infested den, he gets advantage of. And then people using this house for drug den. I'm talking, these are clients. This is you talking about something.
And the thing is, I know that happens because they look for the most vulnerable people, the most gullible people, and most of the time, people with mental health problems who governments the state has given them a place. Drug dealers do kind of say, "Yo, I give you this and this, I can use your place."
This is a person who got into foster care. Maybe he was in foster care, right? A lot of black kids, mixed race kids, are in foster care. Yeah. So the outcomes of life, the life outcomes, are going to be vastly different from each other because not only of his race, but his also his class.
Yes.
So the two social hierarchies.
Classism, racism, if I'm saying too many isms, but I didn't think of it from the class perspective as well. I just saw it from the race perspective. But the class perspective is true because that just shows that it goes beyond even race.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
That's the intersection, and that's what I guess the people that maybe are, in the more center, where I'm more in the center in terms of how I see that there is racism. So there are structural problems, but I also believe in personal agency where that collides at that intersection. I'm not at this point where I think everything is a social construct, and I'm not there that I don't think that structural issues exist. But these sides are not talking to each other, and then what you have is that institutions continue to perpetuate things. and nothing is really changing because we're having the same arguments that we've had 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We're not having new conversations. We're not empowering ourselves. I really believe in self-sustaining communities. Other communities are able to invest in their own youth clubs. You know, like what frustrates me about our people is that when the riots occurred that happened, no other group of people blamed the government for the youth clubs coming down. The Turkish community had their own youth clubs. If in one community there's about maybe 1,000, 2,000 people in one estate, if everybody put £1, that's £2,000 a month that could fund potentially a community. We won't do it. So there's this, and I get it. There is a very incestuous and difficult dependency but connection with the government and black people, that you have people constantly blaming the government, want government to do more, and they're not doing more, and this constant cycle of you have failed our kids, but are we looking inside and saying what have we done to our kids?
I agree. A lot of self-analysis is needed when it comes to black people. You know, we look outwards too much. We like to blame others too much. Now, yes, others do have a part to play, but that's natural in life. Everyone is going to want to succeed, flourish, and sometimes they'll step on others to do so. So that's only natural. And I think we need to focus on ourselves as well, so we can be prepared for these things, because people are going to do it. Look, we're never going to say kumbaya and oh my lord and hold hands and walk down the street like Martin Luther King wanted. It's never going to happen. Humanity, like you said, I think you mentioned when we were driving here that we even have our own internal, you know, classism and our own internal, you know, colorism, our own internal problems. Now, every race and every demographic has so as well. So I think what you're saying is true. We do need to like look inwards and see our problems and try and fix those as much as we try and fix other people's problems of us. And I think maybe that could help. But you know, you mentioned something about drug-induced psychosis. A lot of, okay, you know what, let me not generalize, but a lot of black young men, I don't know if it's women these days because everything's coming trendy, do smoke weed. Could that also be part of the problem?
Oh, yeah, it's a big contributing factor. The THC,
is it a major contributing factor?
Yeah.
Wow.
Research says that, you know, the THC levels within weed, within the plant, the cannabis, whatever you call it, cannabis, within the plant, and because of the toxins, you know, it's not the pure, you know, cannabis plant as it was, you know, Bob Marley them days when they used to smoke it. But the point is, the reaction, people don't know how they're going to react when they take the drug. What your chemical is in your head already, because there's a chemical you're putting in, right? So it can trigger it. And I know for a fact, that's why so many things are normalized in the community. In a group of guys that are smoking weed, they don't smoke weed all the time. It's just casually, But you got one friend that's a bit para. But because you think it's normal, it's normal for him to be like, bruv, someone follow me. But it's normal. You laugh. It's not knowing. It's not. He's going. Bruv, that ain't looking normal, right? That ain't looking. And the thing is, prison unfortunately is glorified in parts of our community. Mental health ain't. So when somebody disappears, they probably tell you that you're on pen. They ain't on pen, bro. They've gone
to the big house. They've gone to the other house.
Me, one of your friends has disappeared for 6 months and comes back and tells you he ain't gone to Africa, ain't gone back to Caribbean. Where's he gone? Ain't gone to prison. He probably
he's in that ward, man. He's in the psych ward.
So because a lot of things are normalized, you know, and I don't know how many people, like I said, that come out of mental health hospitals from the community that come out and say, yeah, you know what, I went to the psych ward. They don't. So people don't actually know that weed that they were smoking triggered them. They had a drug-induced psychosis. They became too paranoid, too delusional, started to have auditory hallucination, visual hallucinations, tactile hallucinations, so you start to feel things. Jeez. Then they go into hospital. What tends to happen sometimes, that could be it. They have one-time experience and that is it. But sometimes they keep going back because they go right back. They get sucked right back in. The thing is, the trajectory of a lot of young black boys that end up take a lot of weed, go to either prison, dead, or in mental health hospitals, and we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about that because it's uncomfortable to talk about that, because it means that we have to put everything on the table. We have to look at the government. We have to look at ourselves. We don't want to. So it's easy to say, what's the government doing?
Like I said, we love to blame.
What are we also doing? What are we doing? There was a time back in the day that these little hoodlums didn't mess with women, older people. They only messed with people that they knew they were in the gang. Now anyone is anyone.
Yeah,
You'll see young guys beating up a girl.
That is
young guys beating up an old lady.
That is definitely to do with some mental health illness.
That definitely. No, I wouldn't even.
They're definitely crazy. I'm joking. But the thing is, no, but let's be real though. Why would you want to attack someone who's not in the gang life?
So where I was going with that, though that could be true, is more that things have broken down to the point where, though it's not respectable to be in a gang, right? There was a time that gangs had codes.
Code of ethics.
Codes are being broken, so everybody can get it. So the goalpost is moving. Why? It's because we, as a group of people, society is allowing that. The fathers are not passing down the torch properly. Some fathers can't chat to their sons.
They don't think because some of them are just crazy. Because you know this bad man thing is about how crazier you are than the next man, you know.
Yeah, that's fair. A lot of it's fair.
You think so?
Yeah, because my friend that went to prison said that no, there are some people that are scary, but there's different. The reality is, in every community, there's antisocial people. That means that people that they're basically psychopathic.
Yes, of course.
We have psychopaths in the black community. In every community, right? Them people them are scary, but not everyone. That's a percentage of people within our community. So there's a small percent of people that truly are psychopaths.
Yeah.
A lot of it is fear because a lot of the free my man in prison, free my man. I think more men need to talk because when I chat to a lot of guys, they are honest and say, bruv, I'm really shit scared, you know. I'm only doing that because I don't, I feel like I have no choice to do all of that. I don't want to do all of that.
I see.
That do that, and then but you can't admit that though, right? Because it'll be like you're a snitch, you're this, you're grass, you're this. You can't admit your feelings.
Pussy.
Yeah. It's usually only when hopefully it's sad, but usually 10, 20, 12 years later in their late 20s and 30s, these same men are like,
enough.
Man, that was stupid back in the day.
Yeah, you could have said it 10 years earlier, but you're scared. Now you got a bit of balls. You're like,
Do you know what
how
I'm
people
saying?
have died now before you say it?
Do you know what I'm trying to say? What's that guy's name? I can't remember his name now. There's a podcast and he talks a lot about he was in a gang life for a very long time. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Nah. There's many gangster podcasters these days. I can't keep up, man. There's bare roadman doing podcasts these days. So I'm like, I don't know which one's which.
So, but a lot of them are obviously talking about that kind of, that lifestyle, how they've kind of gone away with it and stuff like that. But yeah, there's so many things in that pocket of society of people. But then you've got all pockets. So just because you don't have to be in that lifestyle. You could be going about your business and then go through a lot of trauma. So trauma is a big thing. You might experience racism in university, or it may not be nothing to do with race. You might get abused sexually, or maybe, I don't know, somebody dies. Like you said, in your case, auntie's thing dies. Trauma can do something because chemical reactions occur when you have trauma, right? It does something to the brain. So when you go through a number of trauma, at maybe a short space of time, or you go through it and you don't deal with it and you go through something again, that can cause mental health difficulties. And the fact that our parents have gone through a lot of racism and trauma, there's a lot of things what we call we call it generational trauma, right?
Yes, of course.
Or they call it epigenetics.
Yes.
And when I say genetically, is the trauma changes the structure in the brain. So they've seen they've done studies where when a child doesn't get the nurture and care that they like, their brain actually doesn't have the same kind of structure as somebody who's loved and cared for.
Wow.
So trauma can change the structure of the brain. So that obviously informs the genes, isn't it? So when you then have children, the X and the Y chromosome come together, all of that stuff, it will inform the gene. I'm not a genesis, but it informs the genes, and when it comes out, so it then affects the children. So that's the whole idea of generational trauma, and also learned behavior. So what you see,
yes, of course,
if your parents depressed and that's how they respond and how they are, you take on a lot of their mannerisms, the way they see their life. So if you ever meet a person, if you got an aunt that's distrustful, there's one of their child definitely going to be distrustful. Like, you're your mother's child. Like, I don't trust anybody. Like, what happened to you? You trust anybody? Because they've got it from their parents, right? So it's the same with a lot of mental health difficulties that occur, depression, anxiety, if maybe your daughter is anxious, you can see that maybe one of you is quite anxious or more predisposed to being quite anxious. And then, so that's what they say, like usually if there's somebody with mental health disorder in the family, there's usually somebody else in the family. Even if it's not like maybe the parents, it could be a grandparent, it could be uncle and auntie. There's some sort of genetic line within that.
Wow, that's quite interesting, man. That's quite interesting. Another thing I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier about, you know, the bottle and the phone, the rich and the poor, the less privileged person. The less privileged people who, let's say, just hypothetically speaking, let's say they're black, yeah, and they do the same thing that the rich will do, which is hide their child from the world because maybe they might be ashamed of it or whatever it is. I've noticed that a lot growing up. Like since school, I remember I had certain friends who had like a mad, I keep saying that, who had a mentally ill brother or a mentally ill sibling in general. And I'd go and check them, and you'd see like everyone is trying their best to not make me interact with that person. Or sometimes I'll be interacting with them and you can see they're like on edge, like seeing me talk to them and they're praying that I don't notice. And there's times where I haven't noticed. I genuinely haven't. The person is saying something that they're passionate about and I'm thinking, raw, they've done their research. And I've noticed some of them are very highly intelligent people. Yeah. Do you think that whole, you know, misconception that we have where, well, some black people have, where they tend to do that, hide the person from the real world or hide them from interacting with people because they might be embarrassed. Do you think that kind of like takes away from that level of intelligence or takes away from the aspects of their life where there is some normality there? Because I don't think on like a you know, the entire scale they're mad or in general. There must be aspects of their character that isn't.
I love it. I love how you said that. Any disorder is not all of you. So, for example, if if you've got dyslexic, it's not the entire of you, it's part of you, right? Where you see books or you read and all this stuff. It's the same. Somebody's got schizophrenia or bipolar or depressed, even myself when I was depressed. It's not the entirety of me. A person, he can hold conversation. With mental illness, it affects the what do they call it? The executive functioning. Functioning. We call it positive and negative symptoms. So positive symptoms are the hallucinations, the hearing voices, the paranoia. The negative symptoms is that part of the executive functioning, the motivation to bath, to shower, to clean themselves.
That's when you're kind of gone, isn't it?
To kind of not, like maybe to not be able to maybe do certain things that you would
function,
do.
Normal functionality.
So you might meet somebody who is very who's got a mental health illness, maybe quite severe, but maybe they're getting some treatment, but they can have a conversation about politics.
I've met someone like
they're intelligent. They can do poetry. Highly intelligent. They can sing. They can, it doesn't take from them their intelligence. It's a part of their the illness impacts them in terms of how they might perceive things when they're really unwell, and maybe when they're really unwell, they're not able to do things. So what happens in the recovery, why it's really important, is for them to be back into a loving and nurturing environment, so they can relearn the things they need to relearn. But because a lot of people don't get that, right, they're not able to learn things, they're not able to do things. So that's why you go to their room and their room is probably messy or dirty or disgusting, because the way they process information is very different, the way they see things is very different. But when somebody is well, there's people with schizophrenia or bipolar that are doctors, that are anything. It doesn't stop you in life. It's only if you're not getting the right treatment or and that includes therapy, that includes medication, that includes your faith, that includes your family, includes all of these things. But some people don't have that. So when you see that typical mad person walking down the street, they could be relapsing and then they go into hospital and come back. But they're not able to, what they call treatment resistant. There are some people that are treatment resistant. They've gone through so many different types of medication, and unfortunately they still just remain very unwell.
Wow.
And there's some people who they come back out of hospital, and like I said, they come into harsh society. They come into harsh life. It's very, very difficult for them, because some people, when you got severe enduring mental health disorder, which basically means your functioning is impaired, you're not able to function in the society like everybody else. You're not able to work. That's important to work. Of course. That is one of the reasons why working, volunteering, because it's part of your significance, giving back, doing something, getting out of bed, bathing, going out, coming back. Imagine not doing that. So the part of them feels, am I what am I? They start questioning their existence. Not necessarily they want to go self-deletion, but it impacts them. That's why you see people that had a lot of clients that begged. They weren't homeless. So some people that begged, they're not homeless.
They just think that they want to go out there
They
and
want
beg?
more money. No, they just want more money. They've run out. They finished their benefits. Yeah.
Whoa.
So some people that are begging, they're not homeless. They go and they live in a hostel. It's being paid for.
Oh, wow.
But they have a lot of self-esteem issues. They don't feel that they can work. They've been too long in the system.
They can't be around people. They can't socialize. They can't do the normal things. Jeez. That's quite interesting, you know. You've dropped some very interesting points that have really got me looking at it from a perspective that makes me feel like I'm curing my ignorance a bit. You know, because I think we all suffer a bit from ignorance. And when it comes to that, I've just never really been able to put my finger on it and understand it. Do you know what I mean? But are there any professions, because you know sometimes working can be stressful, are there any professions that tend to produce more mentally ill people? It
depends. Mentally ill is such a big spectrum. So you would find, they say a lot of CEOs they score high in antisocial personality disorder. I think a lot of presidents in Africa are psychopaths because they've been part of genocide.
Yeah,
they've done things that are so inhumane.
What they did to get there.
Yeah, they've done things that are so humane. Half of the Nigerian leaders are corrupt. That's a level of antisocial personality disorder that you do not care. You'll kill to get where you are. But yeah,
paranoid.
A lot of chefs suffer from mental health issues. It's a very high pressured environment. So a lot of high pressured environments, the people there that are highly successful, anxious, a lot of highly successful people tell you depressed. That's why you know if you watch Diary of the CEO, right?
Yeah, I like that.
And half of the people there that are successful millionaires, I've gone through depression, anxiety, like, you know what? Wow. So there is something attached to that. There is something attached. You know, I was talking to somebody who's a business owner, and he was saying people that have that go all out and maybe put all their savings into a business. There is a certain type of person that does that. There's a certain type of person that wakes up at 7 a.m, comes home at 10 o'clock, trying to do whatever to build their business, not spending time with their kids, certain type of people. So I wouldn't say that there are prevalences of jobs with people with more mental health issues, but I would say that every job has a type of people that kind of go into that. The typical. So, the typical people that become social workers and nurses and teachers will be very different to the people that maybe become engineers and scientists, right? Or even, for example, software developers. A lot of software developers prefer to be at the computer, not to be around people. They're probably more likely to be more on the autistic spectrum.
I've noticed
They're probably more likely to be very awkward socially.
I work in an environment where not far from us is a place where it's very popular company. I won't mention the name of the company, but they do a lot of graphics for a lot of like the stuff that we watch, from Marvel to Star Trek, all that kind of stuff. And all of them just look like they don't know how to say hello to even each other. They're talking to each other on their breaks. You see them having cigarettes, and they're like, proper nerd. Like, I won't say nerd, but yeah, they're like nerds. And I always wonder, what you're saying to maybe just made me think they're just behind computers all day. It's
the same with creatives, right? A lot of creatives happen to be very anxious, right?
Yeah.
Because
constantly on the creative.
If you're going creative full time, right, and you're going for the love of the passion, and you haven't made it and breaking, you're not sure when you're next going to get paid. There's a certain type of person that becomes fully into that kind of creative world where it can be quite unstable until you get a name for it.
Jeez, that's quite interesting.
And a lot of creatives that not good business people.
Yes, bad business people. Yeah. Some are like Jay-Z. I don't know how he does it.
Right. So there's some people like Jay-Z, like Daps, the videographer. Like some people, they are creative, but they're also very business minded.
Business minded. Yeah, Daps is he's doing big things in Ghana right now. Actually. Yeah. You want to wrap it up with anything?
Ooh. I think what I would say, we need more knowledge. To harness more knowledge. It's like you said, it's cute to be willing to learn. It's not cute to be ignorant when there's knowledge around that you can access, right? So we need to have more conversations. I understand that a lot of people are still not going to want to go therapy, fine, but start having conversations and start being open. I think we need more of this. This was a conversation where we were sharpening minds, iron and sharpening iron. And I think it's so important because we're suffering in silence. I think why mental illness is such a taboo in our community, and we're not getting help that we're getting, despite the structural issues that occur because of the poor mental health outcomes that's delivered by the NHS and certain other systems, is because we're not talking about it. We're not being open. We only talk about it when somebody dies.
Yeah.
share good practice.
Yeah.
If your child or your brother or your sister has a mental health disorder and struggled and overcame and now is doing really well, and you know somebody else, say how can we help and support?
Yeah.
What can occur and happen? What's happened is that everybody's in their own silos. So we need to come together more. I don't mean come together. I don't believe in this whole we come together. I just mean that
in our communities, in our families, in our pockets.
If you know people, if you know, like for example, I section people. So I tell people, look, if you have anybody that you know going through that, call me. I'm a resource of knowledge. I know the system. I am in the system. I'm an agent of the state. Access my knowledge. There is nobody that I know in my family that will will have a breakdown and will go into a state hospital. We'll all go into the private. We'll go in private, mate.
Of course.
I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Holler at me, but we're not using that because you're too scared to ask for help. Ashamed. You then go in, and I could have helped avoid certain things.
And you know, once you go in there, some of them, they just don't give a damn about you.
They don't.
Do you know what I mean?
So my main thing is be transparent, be open. I will say, and I'm going to be harsh on this last point. I really do think it's selfish to stay in your trauma because what you're doing is you are perpetuating it to the next generation. If we want the next generation to be better than we are, better than our parents, we've got to do something different. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, what they call it, insanity.
Yeah.
So we've got to do something different. If you don't believe in therapy, fine. But you've got to do something different. You cannot continue doing the same thing. So mental illness is an important topic to speak on because we are not in the country of our origin. Now, of course, some of us were born here, so technically it is your country of origin, but I mean, it's not where we were from 20, 30, 40 years ago. Some of us, and it is still can be quite hostile. It is hostile being a dark-skinned black woman. It is hostile being a dark-skinned black man. It's hostile being a black person, being a person of color, being Asian, right? That it can be hostile. It can impact your mental well-being. It can. We have to admit that. We have to be honest with that and then come together and seek help. Seek help. There's my service, Frontline Therapist. There's so many services out. When I say so many,
I'm going to put your information, the details.
There's a few. There's so many.
In the
thank you.
Whatever you call it in the description.
There's a few services out there. We need more. Stand up and say, I want to create a service to support my community. We need more service. We need more funding. We need funding in black mental health. That's why I'm doing my doctorate. We need more researchers. We need more biologists. We need more geneticists. We need more people trying to understand. We need more anthropologists that will look at what's happening. We'll look at the different aspects of society and talk about the degradation, to talk about the changes. We don't have that. So everybody's coming up with their own different concepts. We need the historians. We need black historians, black anthropologists from all different nations so that we can understand what happened in Nigeria, what happened in Ghana, what happened in Jamaica, what happened in America, what happened in the United Kingdom. So we can begin to understand our history.
It's all part of what defines who we are, you know?
That's what I would say. And I would just say we need more conversations like this. We need more. I'm tired of conversations about body counts. I'm tired about conversations about side chicks. We need conversations about your mental well-being. We need conversations about sexual. They don't have to be boring. This is a fun conversation. We bust straight. It's not about being serious. It's about having real conversations, having real life. I know some people here watching this are in debt. Some of you guys have just had a breakup. Some of you guys have gone through trauma. You just lost a child. So many different things. These are things that need to be talked about so we can heal. The same thing about generational trauma. Let's have generational healing.
I like that. That's a beautiful way of wrapping it up. So guys, it's the Drazzy Show. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and if this has impacted you in some way, just make sure that you definitely share it. The Drazzy Show. And Ngozi, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. God bless.
The Drazzy Show.